Today, we're going to learn a little bit about Jewish weddings, Jesus' miracles, and how they're not merely just superhuman feats, but they are a demonstration of God's power. We're going to learn a little bit about submitting to Jesus, even though we might not understand his ways or his timing. We'll be in John chapter 2. This is Jesus turning water into wine. We're going to go over verses 1 through 12. All right, hope you enjoy this. Hope it helps. Jesus turns water into wine. The next day, there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother told him, "They have no more wine." Jesus says, "Dear woman, that's not our problem," Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." But his mother told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the jars with water." When the jars had been filled, he said, "Now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies." So the servants followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over. "A host always serves the best wine first," he said. "Then when everyone had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you kept the best until now." This miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After the wedding, he went to Capernaum for a few days with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples. We're going to go over some of the footnotes. Verses 1 through 3. Wedding in Jesus' day were week-long festivals. Banquets would be prepared for many guests. A week would be spent celebrating the new life of the married couple. Often the whole town would be invited, and everybody would come. It was considered an insult to refuse an invitation to a wedding. To accommodate many people, careful planning was needed. To run out of wine was more than embarrassing. It broke the strong unwritten laws of hospitality. Jesus was about to respond to the heartfelt need. Jesus was on a mission to save the world, the greatest mission in the history of humankind. Yet he took time to attend a wedding and take part in its festivities. We may feel a certain duty or obligation not to take time from our important work for social occasions, but maybe these occasions are part of our mission. Jesus valued these wedding festivities because they involved people, and Jesus came to be with people. Our mission can often be accomplished in joyous times of celebration with others. Bring balance to your life by bringing Jesus into times of celebration with others, as well as of times of work. Verse 4 footnotes. Mary was probably not asking Jesus to do a miracle. She was simply hoping that her son would help solve this major problem and find some wine. Tradition says that Joseph, Mary's husband, was dead, so she probably was used to asking for her son's help in certain situations. Jesus' answer to Mary is difficult to understand, but maybe that is the point. It showed her that he had his own priorities and was focused on God's timetable. Although Mary did not understand what Jesus was going to do, she trusted him to do what was right. Those who believe in Jesus but run into situations they cannot understand must continue to trust that he will work in the best way. Verse 5 footnotes. Mary submitted to Jesus' way of doing things. She recognized Jesus was more than her human son. He was the Son of God. When we bring our problems to Jesus, we may think we know how he should take care of them, but he may have a completely different plan from ours. Like Mary, we should submit and allow him to deal with the problem as he sees best. Footnotes on verse 10. People look everywhere but to God for excitement and meaning. For some reason, they expect God to be dull and lifeless. Just as the wine Jesus made was the best, so life in him is better than life on our own. Why wait until everything else runs out before trying God? Why save the best until last? Footnotes on verse 11. When the disciples saw Jesus' miracle, they believed in him. The miracle showed his power and nature and revealed the way he would go about his ministry, helping others, speaking with authority, and being in personal touch with people. Miracles are not merely superhuman events, but events that demonstrate God's power. Almost every miracle Jesus did was a renewal of fallen creation, restoring sight, making people who were lame walk, even restoring life to the dead. Believe in Jesus not because he is a superhero, but because he is God who continues his creation. Even in those of us who are poor, weak, crippled, orphaned, blind, deaf, or struggling with some other desperate need. Here's just a little insight on what we're about to read in these next 11 verses of John. And it's going to be insight to keep your mind on, all the way up until chapter 12, verse 50. Message and ministry of Jesus, the Son of God. John stresses the deity of Christ. He gives us 8 miracles that serve as signs that Jesus is the Messiah. In this section, he records Jesus describing himself as the bread of life, the water of life, the light of the world, the gate, and the good shepherd. John provides teachings of Jesus found nowhere else. This is the most theological of the 4 Gospels. Jesus encounters belief and unbelief from the people. Here's where Jesus clears the temple. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration, so Jesus went to Jerusalem. In the temple area, he saw merchants selling cattle, sheep, and doves for sacrifices. He also saw dealers at the table exchanging foreign money. Jesus made a whip from some rope and chased them all out of the temple. He drove out the sheep and cattle and scattered the money changers' coins all over the floor and turned over their tables. Then going over to the people who sold doves, he told them, "Get these things out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace." Then his disciples remembered this prophecy from scriptures. Passion for God's house will consume me. But the Jewish leaders demanded, "What are you doing? If God gave you authority to do this, show us a miraculous sign to prove it." "All right," Jesus replied. "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rise it up." "What?" they exclaimed. "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you can rebuild it in 3 days?" But when Jesus said this temple, he meant his own body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered he had said this, and they believed both the scriptures and what Jesus had said. Nicodemus visits Jesus at night. Because of the miraculous signs Jesus did in Jerusalem at the Passover celebration, many began to trust in him. But Jesus didn't trust them because he knew all about the people. No one needed to tell him about human nature, for he knew what was in each person's heart. Footnotes on verse 13. The Passover celebration took place yearly at the temple in Jerusalem. Every Jewish male was expected to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem during this time. For more insight on this, you can check out Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16. This was a week-long festival. The Passover was one day, and the festival of unleavened bread lasted the rest of the week. The entire week commemorated the freeing of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, and you can find further insight on that in Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 13. Jerusalem was both the religious and political seat of Palestine, and it was the place where the Messiah was expected to arrive. The temple was located there, and many Jewish families from all over the world would travel to Jerusalem during the key festivals. The temple was on an imposing site, a hill overlooking the city. Solomon had built the first temple on this same site almost 1,000 years earlier, during 959 BC. But his temple had been destroyed by the Babylonians. You can find more information about that in 2 Kings chapter 25. The temple was built in 515 BC, and Herod the Great had enlarged and remodeled it. Footnotes on verses 14 through 25. John records this clearing or cleansing of the temple. A second clearing occurred at the end of Jesus' ministry, about 3 years later. That event is recorded in Matthew chapter 21, verse 12 through 17, Mark 11, verse 12 through 19, and Luke chapter 19, verses 45 through 48. The temple area was always crowded during Passover, with thousands of out-of-town visitors. The religious leaders crowded it even further by allowing money changers and merchants to set up booths in the court of the Gentiles. They rationalized this practice as a convenience for the worshippers as a way to make money for the temple upkeep. But the religious leaders did not seem to care that the court of the Gentiles was so full of the merchants. Foreigners found it difficult to worship. Worship was the main purpose for visiting the temple. No wonder Jesus was angry. The temple tax had to be paid in local currency, so foreigners had to have their money changed.
but the money changers often charged exuberant exchange rates. The people were also required to make sacrifices for sins. Because of the long journey, many could not bring their own animals. Some who brought animals had them rejected for imperfections. So animal merchants conducted a flourishing business in the temple courtyard. The price of sacrificial animals was much higher in the temple area than anywhere else. Jesus was angry at the dishonest, greedy practices of the money changers and merchants, and he particularly disliked their presence on the temple grounds. They were making a mockery of God's house of worship. Our attitude toward the church is wrong if we see it as a place for personal contacts or business advantage. Make sure you attend church to worship God and enjoy spiritual fellowship with others. Footnotes on verses 15 through 16. Jesus was obviously angry at the merchants who were exploiting those who had come to God's house to worship. There is a difference between uncontrolled rage and righteous indignation, yet both are called anger. We must be very careful how we use the power of emotion, of anger. It is right to be angry about injustice and sin. It is wrong to be angry over trivial personal offenses. Jesus made a whip and chased out the money changers. Does his example permit us to do violence against wrongdoers? Certain authority is granted to some, but not to all. For example, the authority to use weapons and restrain people is granted to police officers, but not to the general public. The authority to imprison people is granted to judges, but not to individual citizens. Jesus had God's authority, something we cannot have. While we want to live like Jesus, we should never try to claim his authority where it has not been given to us.
Footnotes on verse 17.
Jesus took the evil acts in the temple as an insult against God, and thus he did not deal with them half-heartedly. He was consumed with righteous anger against such flagrant disrespect for God.
Footnotes on verses 21 through 22.
Jesus was not talking about the temple made of stones, but about his body. His listeners didn't realize it, but Jesus was greater than the temple.
You can find more information about that in Matthew chapter 12, verse 6.
His words would take on meaning for his disciples after his resurrection. That Jesus so perfectly fulfilled his prediction became strong proof for his claim to be God.
We're going to finish up here on the footnotes on verses 23 through 25.
The Son of God knows all about human nature. Jesus was well aware of the truth of Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, which states, "The human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is?" Jesus was discerning, and he knew that the faith of some followers was superficial. Some of the same people claiming to believe in him at this time would later yell, "Crucify him!" Believing comes easily when it is exciting and everyone else agrees with you. But keep your faith firm, even when following Jesus isn't popular.
This concludes our reading and study on John chapter 2. Next, we're going to be going into the conversation that Jesus and Nicodemus had. We're going to find out a little bit about who Nicodemus is. And so join me next time for John chapter 3. Y'all have a blessed day. And if you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Today is about belief, believing in yourself, believing in the word of God, believing in Jesus, believing that God is sovereign, that he's the Alpha, the Omega, all powerful, all seeing, all knowing. Even the birds don't have to worry about how they're going to live or what they're going to eat. So how much more do we not have to worry if he made us in his image? Today's about having faith and trusting that Jesus is Lord, and that when he died for us, he defeated evil and death, and he took the keys back. And we have the opportunity to have that same power and authority of the Holy Spirit that brought him back to life, that resurrected him, that he promised to leave with us when he left us physically. So just believe in Jesus and remember that we can do all things through him who strengthens us. If we ask, we shall receive. If we seek, we shall find. If we knock, the door shall be open to us. Just remember that his word is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword. I hope this helps you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the reading. I hope it didn't go too long. I love you guys. Have a blessed day.